Mr. Adrian and Mr. Ehsan here, both from Flinders University. So I guess I will just do some introduction. So Assalamualaikum and Salam Malaysia Madani. Good afternoon to everybody online from Australia, from Malaysia, from everywhere. So first of all, thank you for the speakers, for the speaker, Mr. Ehsan from Flinders, and thank you also to Mr. Adrian, who organized the team from Flinders for having this talk with Geological Society of Malaysia and Institute of Geology Malaysia, IGM. Thank you for that. So without wasting any more time, so we have 30 participants right now. So our talk today is the title is how effective are the peer reviews of groundwater model. So I guess I'll give the floor to Mr. Ehsan to start the talk, and then afterwards we should have some good question and answer session. The floor is yours.
Let me share my screen.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So while Ehsan's doing that, can I just introduce a little bit the topic and
sure, Mr. Adrian. Yep.
Sure. So hello everybody. Thanks for having us. Yeah, it's great to see Adam again. So Ehsan is from Iran originally. He got a very prestigious Flinders International Research Scholarship, which is, they're very competitive. I think the university only gives out 5 each year across all disciplines, and we have a hospital and lots of medical people. So so he comes, you know, from a very competitive area. So back in 2012, or even earlier than that, I was involved in a large court case. And part of that court case, the court case itself was Australia's largest environmental legal issue. And ever since that time, I've been involved in one way or another with that particular mine and some of the environmental impacts around it. And right at the moment, we have an ARC, Australian Research Council, linkage project with an industry partner on looking at that mine's impacts on the neighbouring springs. And out of that work have come a series of questions about groundwater mining, groundwater modelling, environmental investigation, groundwater management, the guidance that's available for people building groundwater models, and so on. So I don't want to give away too much of Ehsan's story, but anyway, that's a bit of the background. So yeah, Ehsan's, I think he's been here for how long? How far through your PhD are you, Ehsan?
It's 1.5. Yeah, I'm mid of my journey. Yeah. Okay,
right. So he's about halfway through. Yeah. So great. So anyway, over to you, Ehsan. And you know, occasionally I may jump in and see if I can rescue him from any strife that he gets in during the presentation, because I've been working on this for a long time. And so he's already agreed that he's happy for me to come in every now and then with any comments. So it might end up being a bit of a joint exercise. But anyway, over to you. Let's see.
Thank you so much. And good afternoon, everyone. And welcome to my presentation. And first of all, let me thank you, Adam Hashim, for inviting me for having a brief talk about my PhD. And thank you, Adrian, for introducing me to others and talk about some background of the project that we are going to do during my PhD. And thank you all for coming here and listening to my presentation. As you can see on the screen, the topic that I'm going to talk about today is how effective are the peer reviews of groundwater models. So let's have a brief talk about what is groundwater. You know, imagine if you are standing on the floor, on the ground, beneath your feet, there is something more than just soil. Deep down, like here, there's something that's called groundwater. And the groundwater is the water that infiltrates into the ground and is stored between tiny spaces, stored in tiny spaces between uh, uh, rocks, salt particles, and even cracks of rocks. You know, it's like a hidden treasure beneath our foot. And it's maybe you cannot see it, but it's really important. Why it's important? As you can see in the left-hand picture, from the total amount of water that exists in our planet, only 2.5% of that is fresh water. And about 30% of that fresh water is groundwater, which it makes up to 97% of the Earth's liquid fresh water. So it serves as a primary source of drinking water for millions of people in all around the world. And it's really important for agricultural and industrial activities. And yeah, even it's also really important for ecosystem health, because the groundwater sustains wetlands, streams, and other water surface bodies. So managing this vital source of water is essential for ensuring of sustainability of our water resources, and also for well-being of both ecosystem and human communities. So one of the tools that nowadays widely used for managing groundwater is groundwater modeling. So what is the groundwater modeling? Groundwater model is like virtual pre-representation of the groundwater system. And it's help us to understand how water moves, where it goes, where it comes from, and even how much water is available, something like that. And you know, actually we have different kind of groundwater model, like physical models, conceptual models, but the model we are going to talk about today is computer models. And many people think that we are taking the real world and put it into the computer, but it's not the things that we are doing for groundwater modeling, especially in computer models. Groundwater models actually are built for questions. And you need only put those part of the question that is matter to the question you have, those part of the system that is matter for the question you have. And it might be important for the other question, but you don't need it to put in your model if it's not important for the question you have. So, for example, if you are going to know about the effect of evapotranspiration on groundwater, so you need to put the evapotranspiration because it's important for your question. But if you are interested in another things, for example, to know about how much water is moved from your system to the sea, so it's completely different because it's a bit for different question. So if someone build a model for a certain question, and another person comes and uses it for the other question, it ends up with many problems. So many people cannot use groundwater models properly. Besides, when you are going to build a groundwater model, you need to have some scientific background or knowledge like hydrology, hydrogeology, ecology, mathematics, engineering, something like that. But you know, no one can be an expert in all of those things. And many things going to the groundwater, to that model, it's difficult to understand what's happened. And in order to make sure that everyone is aware that what's going into the model, how that should be explained, or what we should expect, how geology, how good is geology, how accurate is mathematics, or how perfect is the representation of for example, the ecology. We have guidelines, and the guidelines help us to build a groundwater model properly. So we have several different international guidelines that which are widely used in all around the world, and these are some example of those which are from the English speaker countries like Australia, New Zealand, the United States, Canada, and the last one is the textbook, which is widely used for groundwater modeling. And you know, the people use these guidelines when you are using this guideline, after one of the most important step in guidelines is reporting. So because the stockholder or decision maker, when they want to make a decision, they will commonly they rely on the report because they don't have knowledge about those things that I've already mentioned. So they prefer to use these things. And even there are many groundwater modeling software, so they prefer to use the reports. And the report is easy for every person to read it. A stockholder, scientific person, or farmer, landowner, and everyone can read it. But the thing is here is how we can rely on reports. Which report is good and which report is bad. So the quality of report is important because based on that report, the decision maker make decision. So guidelines have some advice about the quality of reporting. Unfortunately, I served to find the guidelines, the groundwater modeling guidelines in Malaysia, but unfortunately, the only things I could find it is the guidelines for groundwater supply project, and only from 250 pages of that guideline, only one page was talking about the groundwater model. And if anyone knows about the groundwater modeling in Malaysia, I'd love to know. So this is the expectation of groundwater modeling guidelines about the reporting. From 8 guidelines that I reviewed, 4 of them mentioned that the groundwater modeling report should have sufficient information that other people can rebuild that model. And the other 4 guidelines mention and emphasize the report should accompany with a model archive that allow the third person to rebuild the model. But I couldn't find anything like this in that one page from the guide I show you from the Malaysia. So for finding, for me to find and get a general sense about the quality of reporting, groundwater modeling reporting, we examined 25 reports from different countries like United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, UK, Italy, India, and South Africa, and tested whether they have enough information in the report to rebuild that model or not. So this is the result of that examination. As you can see in the top here, it's the number of reports, like number 1 to 25, and these are 18 different key components that we examine from the provided information in those reports to see that they are reproducible or not. And we categorize them in 3 different categories. For example, the green means that report provided enough information to repeat that key component. The orange one means you need to make assumption. It's not, you need to make assumption to reproduce that one. And the red one means missing information and it's not possible for you to rebuild that key component. And the asterisk here, it means they don't use that key component in their model. And this diagram, as you can see in top of some numbers, this report originated from the country that mentioned and emphasized the report should have sufficient information to rebuild that model. From the result, you can see only one report had enough information that rebuild the model. And although the solver was mentioned in that report, but the convergence criteria was not mentioned, and we treat it as a preferred, not essential things for rebuilding the model. And also, report number 3, when I check this one, based on the information that they provided in the report, it was not reproducible. You can see how many assumptions you need to make for building that key component. But when this report was the only report from that 25 reports provided an archive file. So when I look at that archive file, I figure out that it is possible to rebuild this model 100%. So it shows the importance of the archive file. And please remember the result of number 10, report number 10, because in the a couple of next slide, I will go through this report deeply. So this is the outcome of this review. You know, we found that the reports are not consistent with the expectation of the groundwater modeling guidelines. And, you know, it's raising substantial concern about the transparency and accountability of models in this field. And, you know, it's like it's hinder the essential auditing tasks like peer review, model validation, or evaluating the accuracy and reliability of the model. So we have three options. The first one is that the guidelines strongly emphasize that the report should have enough information to rebuild the model, which is obviously mentioned in the guidelines at the moment. But sometimes, in some cases, it's difficult because, for example, if imagine you have a model with more than 1,000 wells, and each wells has different pumping extraction rate. So if you are going to put those wells which are changing during the time in the report, so it takes more than maybe 100 pages, so it's really difficult. So another option that we can use is the reporting includes and accompany with an archive file. And the third option, which is my less favorite, that the guidelines say give up and say it doesn't matter how many things or which things you are putting in the report. It doesn't matter. So these are three options. And if anyone wants to add some comment in this one, I will be happy to hear in what you think about these three options, guys. So if there's no comment,
I have a comment for you,
okay.
Ehsan.
Yeah.
So with the archive, so just to be clear, an archive is where you provide the modeling files and you provide the data, conceptual model, and you give that archive and make it available to people. So they don't have to rely on the report if they want to reproduce the model. But a lot of companies, particularly mining companies, they don't like to give the models away because they contain important commercial information, you know, maybe even.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
But I mean, it's nice to have the files because then you know exactly what's happened. And we don't always know if the report really does reflect the modeling. But so there's this commercial problem, you know, people giving away commercial secrets. There's also sometimes people do stochastic modeling, which means they produce hundreds of models, you know, and so you would have to put in enough code into the archive for someone to rerun all of those models. And for example, some people use high performance computers, supercomputers, and they're sending off hundreds of model simulations off to the supercomputer. And so you could have a model archive that no one could really use, right? Because the code is referring to a supercomputer no one has access to, or the archive refers to software that you and I can't use. For example, the Eclipse software that does variable density. It does dual fluids and dual phase flow. This is like tens of thousands of dollars a year for the license, right? So if we have that, we can't run it. So do you have any thoughts on that aspect of the archive? Like, are there solutions to that, do you think?
Yeah. You're right. You're completely right. And, you know, there is another person that can play a key role in here. You may can guess what I'm going to say because it was in my the title of my talk. It's peer reviewer. So we can ask if we can have a peer reviewer and ask him to check it for us, because he's the only person that can have access to all those things if the company doesn't like to give us, but he can show or give it to the peer reviewers or something like that. Yeah. So I think that the peer reviewer it's a good solution. And when a groundwater model gets built, typically it gets peer reviewed by a peer reviewer. So we can ask them to do it for us. Why we can ask them? Because at the moment there is no question in template of the peer reviewers in groundwater modeling guidelines. The question like, is the model is reproducible based on the information in the report? So there is no question like that. And the peer reviewer can play another key roles in groundwater modeling. Imagine the decision maker or a stockholder, or for example, in the court case, the judge or lawyer going to make a decision, and they don't have any background about the groundwater modeling, about those kind of things that I already mentioned, like geology, like other things. So in that time, they need another person that help them and translate what's happening in that model and rely on peer review to say, okay, have a better and more reliable decision. So they can play that role. And now I'm going to go through one example in Australia and show you how effective is a peer review in groundwater modeling. So now I'm going to talk about one of the controversial coal mine in Australia and even in the world, which is the Australian largest environmental coal mine. And if you search the internet like Carmichael coal mine and plus, for example, controversy, you will find many news about this one, and there are many campaign against this activity and say, okay, stop mining because of the effect of this kind of activity in the environment. So I will go through the place where it is. So as you can see in the left picture, that case study is located in the center of Queensland. And as you can see in the right picture, it's the white border shows the Carmichael coal mine list. And if you compare this scale bar for this coal mine list, it's around 35 kilometers long and it's around 8 kilometers wide. So it's mega mine. You can imagine how big it is. And next to this mine list around 8 kilometers in the west of that mine, there is a bunch of or sorts of very important iconic springs, which are Dumawula springs. And these springs are really important because they support over 160 wetlands and is a significant cultural landmark for indigenous people in Australia. So it's really important. So let's go through this case study and see what's happened and how the peer review effect on the decision of the judge in the court case. Yeah. So these are the report from the Adani that they build the model and provide those model, the report of that model. And based on this report, the independent peer review reviewed that reports, and he doesn't have access to that archive model. The only things that he could to review was the reports. And based on the review of the independent peer review, the judge made a decision. So look, let's see what the independent peer review said about the reports. Independent peer review said that this report and this model, there was no material weakness, and the uncertainty of conceptual model and parameters is commendable, and the performance of the model is consistent with the guidelines. And based on this talk, the judge made a decision. Let's see. And here the judge referred to the independent peer review, and based on the evidence that independent peer review provides, and she or he made a decision, said, okay, it is fit for that purpose. At the moment, the other guys, like my supervisor, Adrian Werner, who is the hydrogeologist and groundwater modeler, and Professor John Webb, who is the geologist, and he has experience of more than 2 years on hydrology as well. So they reviewed that groundwater modeling reports, and they had some some scientific claim against them. For example, about the conceptual models, that was not that much good, and about the uncertainty of that model, about the features that they put in their model, and something like that. And also 4 years after the maiden decision, Cicero and Geoscience Australia, which are two big organizations in Australia, say that model is not suitable for that purpose. But the judge only listened to only considered the independent peer review who paid by the company. So the judge didn't mention anything about those things, those scientific comments that these academic reviewers put on these reports. So let's go through this model and see what's happened in that model. You know, it is the conceptual model of the geological layers of that model, which is provided by Adani. As you can see from here, this is the chemical coal mine, and this is the location of springs. And there's some argument about the source aquifer of springs in here. For example, the mining company said these aquifers are supported by shallow aquifers, but the other people would have to say that these springs might have been supported by deeper aquifer like Permian sediments. Because Adani will mining the deeper aquifer, if the springs supported by deeper aquifer, they are expected to go dry. Whereas if they are supported by shallow aquifer like this one, Adani predicted that the spring will only face or have a small drawdown. So the future of this spring depends on which conceptual model they use. But the company didn't use the other plausible conceptual models. So to see what's happening in the model, they don't give it as a computer file. So the only way we could understand what's happened, we try to rebuild that model. So we use the reverse engineering approach to rebuild that model. For example, these key components Adani used in their model. So we extract our requirement of those key components and rebuild them. And this model had around 12 layers and more than 4 million cells. You can imagine how complex it was. And do you remember that I mentioned the report number 10? That was the result of this report. And you can imagine how many assumptions we needed to make to build that model. And it took me around more or less 1 year to rebuild that model. So this is the result of my task to rebuild that model. As I've already mentioned, that model has 12 layers, but Adani only put the result of 1 layer, which was layer number 4, because they believe the source aquifer of that layer is layer number 4, which is climatic sandstone. And this is the result of Adani, and this is the result of my model. As you can see, more or less they are the same, because the only things that I could compare my results with Adani result was that layer. As you can see, they are almost the same. And Adani provided some point from other different layers. Then I compare those outputs from Adani's model and compare with my result. And I found it okay. It's almost the same because the RMSE is less than mm, in a half meters, and mean absolute area is less than half meters. So if I relay on my result and say the model that I built is the same as Adani model, so for understanding which the source of the source of that aquifer, I need to know which layer had enough hydraulic head to support that spring and immediate surface. Because of that, I subtract the surface elevation from the hydraulic head of that layer to see that had enough hydraulic head to support that spring, because it must be more than the surface. As you can see in here, it's positive because the head is lower than the land surface. This is the layer number 2, and this is the result of layer number 3. And this is the result of number 4, and this is of layer number 5, which are the shallow aquifer, and Adani claimed the source of that spring from that one. But I don't have any result. I don't have any results of those layers from Adani. So the only thing I can talk about my result. So let's go through the other layers and see what's happened for the deeper aquifers. For example, layer 8 and layer 9, it shows that exactly in the places of the location of the spring, we have enough head that support those springs. As you can see here, it's around 6 meters hydraulic head that can support. It's like head 6 and 6, more or less the same. And how about the other layers? You can see. Yeah, it means the source of that aquifer, for me, based on the result that I gained so far, so I can say, yeah, those aquifer can support. So the conceptual models they use in their model, so it's not good. So if rely on that model, so we expect that the spring will go dry in the future. They will lose a lot of water and drawdown. So it was an example of Australian case. So however, you may have some example like this in your country. The example like this, which is come up, I think, recently in your country. And the whole point of my talk, the things that I talk about, the effect of peer review on models. That is the peer review can ultimately change decision. So you should be careful about the peer reviewers, because there can be a difference between a massive decision or not. And also people should be aware of the implication of peer reviewers, because when it comes to the court case, so maybe the judge don't listen to don't consider to the other experts, and only rely on the independent peer reviews. So we need to hold them high standard, because if not, people can provide bullshit in the report, and no one can care about those things, and it will end up with crazy project, and they will destroy everything. So it was the whole point of this talk. And at the end of this talk, I would like thanks Adrian and Christian and Amy, who are support me and supervise me to do my PhD. And thank you all for attention to this talk. Yeah.
Well done.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ehsan.
No, you're
and
welcome.
Adrian.
Yeah.
So that's the presentation. Of course, I do have some questions before I
Yeah.
open it to the floor.
Okay.
All right. So yes, it is important that the model, a good model, as you shown, can be replicated by others. So that is among the most important notes that you get from the guidelines. from the guidelines that you read and you analyze, it is important that the model can be replicated by others.
Yeah.
So the models need to be very validated, and also, of course, has to be reviewed by peer. Okay, so from your reverse modeling in Adani case, the spring source did come from the deeper aquifer, right?
Yeah.
So the judge says that the peer reviewer, independent peer reviewer, has already make a decision that the model suits for its purpose. After that, several years, the government or the CSIRO and the federal government says that the model is incorrect. Did the government or the agency take any action to the independent peer reviewer?
No, zero, not a thing. Yeah, it's a tricky thing. I mean, so I gave a talk. I went around Australia, and in all the capital cities, I gave this talk, and almost every time I gave a presentation about this coal mine and that peer review, I got a lot of people getting kind of angry. I think they see it as they have trouble seeing a peer review as being anything except independent. So even when you present them with the notion that even though it says independent peer review, that peer reviewer was paid by the mining company. And so I'm not paid by anyone to do, for me to look at these things up. I'm an academic who just has interest in the science and things being correct, And so, yeah, there's a cultural thing, I think. There's the mining industry believes that they can look after their own interests. And so, yeah, there seems to be a lot of pushback on even looking into whether a peer review was done properly or not. There's no peer review of the peer reviews, and even talking about doing a peer review of the peer reviews got a lot of people really upset.
Yeah, correct. In my case, I'm right now has been appointed as an independent checker geologist. So independent checker geologist, but the good thing is that I've been appointed by the government, so I have full authority to act on behalf of what the best for the government. But in your case of Adani, the Adani paid the independent reviewer. If the independent peer reviewer is from the judge or from the federal court, I guess it wouldn't be the same result, is it, Adrian?
Well, I mean, in the court case, I was asked to provide my advice for the land court. So, in a way, I wasn't hired by one side against the mine or by the mining side against people that were concerned about the environment. When you're an expert witness for the Land Court of Queensland, you're actually serving the court. So in that regard, and I was effectively not paid. And so in that regard, I wasn't an independent expert. No, I didn't have a stake in the game. I don't get income from the mining industry, and I certainly don't get income from, the springs. They're not paying me anything, they don't really have a voice. And so I was the independent person, yeah. So I think that question of independence is tricky, because what happens in Australia is a lot of the peer reviewers have worked for the the companies they do the peer review for, or they will in the future, or they have consultancies, and generally they don't use academics much to do this peer review work. And then even when you're in the court case, the opposing lawyer will say, you're just an academic, what do you know? You don't know really the practical things. You just know the theory, right? And yeah, so it's tricky. I don't know if there's an easy answer, because it's hard to really tell. I think for most people to tell who's independent, who's not independent. It's it's tricky.
Yeah, it's very tricky. All right. So thank you, Adrian. So going back to the flaws, and we have several questions, two to be exact, Mr. Ehsan.
Yeah.
So the first one is from Hafizi,
Yeah.
my junior Hafizi. Okay, how did you differentiate the area into layers? I assume the soil thickness is very thick. So maybe the first question first.
The only thing is that I did, it was not my model. I used everything that Adani provided in the report. So, okay, it's some, for example, they provided some uh, bore logs. So I extract the information from different layers and put in the model, and they put for example, some pages of and some sample point and say, okay, the thickness of that layer is like that, and some cross sections. So I made many assumptions to create those layers, and it took me, I think, more than 6 months to create the vertical discretization, like the thickness of layers. It was a really tough task for me to do it. Yeah.
And you said before that you have 4 million cells inside your model.
Yes, 4 million cells, and I think I had 12 layers, around 970 something rows, and around 350 columns. So you can imagine it's more than 4
What
million
is the
cells.
size of each of those cells?
It was varied. It
That's
starts
very, I
from
mean, the smallest one to the biggest one.
The biggest one is 1,000, and the smallest one was 50
50
meters.
meters.
Yes.
All
Yeah.
right, all right. That's
Yeah.
good. That's very
Yeah.
detailed.
Yeah.
That's why you have more than 4 million cells. It's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So Hafizi, I hope that's answered your question. If not, you can reply back in the chat. Okay. The second question is from Shilajini Turpanen. So wouldn't it be more accurate to state that report was done by hydrogeology, the consultants for the client? Yeah, I mean, the hydrogeology is the company that is doing the independent peer review. Therefore, the peer review process within the consultancy should also be questioned as well, not Adani internal review process. So, yes, in the question said that it shouldn't be independent peer review. It should be called something else, because independent should not be related to Adani, but in fact Adani paid it. So what is your
Yes,
opinion on
exactly.
that, Mr. Ehsan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I guess the way forward is maybe, I don't know, is Australia right now doing something about this peer reviewing or third party opinion? If you have any inconclusive or any what do you call problems affecting the state or the land or the court, is there any guidelines, or is there any, I know we don't have guidelines on that. Australia is taking note on that,
So
especially in Flinders, yeah.
if you just let me, Ehsan, have a crack at this
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Good. Yeah.
So there's a couple of points here. The first one is that the peer reviewer has a template to fill in for assessing groundwater modeling guidelines of groundwater models. So the guidelines give the peer reviewer like a checkbox, check this, check this, check this. So the guidelines, the Australian groundwater modeling guidelines, are not only telling groundwater modelers and people that use them what should be in the groundwater models, they're also telling the peer reviewers what to look for. And so peer reviewers have this template, this checkbox list thing that they fill out. Now, there's nothing in their list about whether the model is reproducible from the report. They're not asked that question. So even though the guidelines say you should do that, they then don't ask the peer reviewer whether they should check that. So that's one of the issues. But the other one is that, a peer reviewer might say, I used the guidelines, I answered the questions, as best I could. But a recent peer review that I looked at for another mine actually in Australia, the peer reviewer in fact said these things are all bad with the model. These things are wrong. These things haven't been done correctly. And then nothing happened, So even where a peer reviewer picks these things up, kind of nothing really happened. And the most ironic thing with the court case that Ehsan has been talking about is that the opposite, the person that was representing the miners in the court case, they also said that there were problems with the model. And at one stage, they said something like, I didn't realize this method could be abused like this until I saw what these people have done. So the judge didn't just ignore my suggestions, but they also ignored the miners' own experts' suggestions. So in effect, the judge threw out all of the expert witnesses, and we had to be on the stand and have all the lawyers attacking us and trying to take our opinions away. And we had a chance to go backwards and forwards, whereas the peer reviewer just gets to write a document and walk away, So that's one of the challenges. Now, in regards to your statement about whether there's guidelines for, putting in appeals, that process is regulated. So mining companies have a regular update on their impacts, and at that point, people in the general public can put an appeal in. But it's a lengthy process, and it's quite expensive, and you need to get a lot of lawyers involved, and so they start charging in 6-minute increments, and so you need to have quite a lot of resources behind you. And the mining companies, of course, are dealing with this all the time, so they're quite good at taking on anyone that has that tries to appeal that. But it's an ongoing thing, and the biggest challenge is that lawyers don't like uncertainty. But groundwater, we deal with uncertainty all the time. We're constantly trying to say this is uncertain, this is uncertain. But lawyers, they need a yes or no answer. They need black or white. Is there an impact? Is there not an impact? They don't want to deal with there could be an impact. The likelihood is this likelihood. They don't like that. And so there's a mismatch between the understanding of uncertainty and dealing with uncertainty in the law versus in hydrogeology. And when you put hydrogeology into court cases, it becomes, in the end, the judge has to choose the person they like the most, the person they believe, and then they go with that. And they're not hydrogeologists. So it kind of becomes like a personality, a popularity test,
Yeah. You don't have to be in court to be trial that way. Even inside a meeting, if you are the only hydrogeologist, the others are engineers, you get smacked. So that's the disadvantage of being a hydrogeologist. We always deal with uncertainties. Whereas the law says that uncertain means unreliable. So there's no fact on uncertainty. So that's the loophole on that. Until we manage that, then I think the law will always have the better advantage than us. Okay. So the last, I would like to throw some question, or maybe have an opinion from Ehsan and Adrian. Yeah. Right now, Malaysia is going to mine the NREE, which is a non-radioactive element. So in mining that NREE, we have decided to use more environmental environmental approach, which is the ISL, in situ leaching, something like that. So in situ leaching involves a lot of groundwater, and the environmental impacts could be seen years after the ISL commence, not in the near future, not in the short duration. So in your guys' experience in dealing with mining in Australia, how did you see this ISL fits into the narrative of sustainable mining? So this should be the last question, and to sum it up, Mr. Ehsan and Mr. Adrian, please.
I think Mr. Adrian would be some expert, have some experience in that one. And do you have any comment, Adrian?
So ISL, so remind me what ISL is?
In situ leaching. So you leach.
Oh, right.
So
Yes. Okay. Yes.
yeah, in
Yes,
situ
okay.
leaching.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So ISL is needs special permission because you have to inject into the aquifer water that is a lower quality than what is already there. And in Australia, in most cases, this requires very special special approvals. But in Australia, water resources problems and mining problems have different laws. So, for example, if you want to take water out to irrigate your crops, you need to get a license to take that water. Similarly, if you just want to inject water into an aquifer, then the Environmental Protection Agency, you have to get approval, and the water has to be a higher quality than what you put in the ground. And so anyway, if I want to inject water in my backyard, I have very strict Environmental Protection Agency rules to overcome. If you're a mine site, you don't have those rules. You have a different set of rules. And those rules allow for things that people that own farms aren't allowed to do. So it does create a little bit of, if farmers are looking at what miners are doing, they ask the question, why are they allowed to do that, but I'm not allowed to do this? And it has created a lot of conflict between the different water users across the country. Because if you're injecting a low pH fluid into the ground so that you can dissolve a mineral, suck the water out, and then precipitate that mineral out so that you're effectively mining it that way, you're going to leave that liquid in the ground after you finished your mining. What's more, when you put a low pH fluid in the ground, you're not just going to dissolve uranium or whatever other minerals you're looking for. You're going to dissolve a lot of different things, and some of those are gonna stay there. There's another method of mining. If you think in situ leaching sounds a bit injecting acid into the ground, there's a method of mining that they're testing in various parts of the world, where they set fire to the coal under the ground. So the coal is now burning while it's in the ground. And because it's burning, it forces all the gas along the coal, along the coal layer, and they extract the gas at the other end, away from where the coal is literally on fire in the ground.
I mean, under the ground. So
that's right.
Burning under the ground.
That's right. They're burning it.
At the end of the formation, they extract the gas.
That's right.
Right? That's one innovation.
And so when they burn the coal, though, they release quite a lot of gases that are not good for the environment. And it's so at the moment they've been testing that methodology. I don't think it yet has widespread application. But the thought of turning the earth on fire, because of course the coal will shrink when you do that, and you'll get subsidence and lots of other issues. But there are certain things you can do in mining in Australia that other fields of endeavour do not have those same privileges. And yes, I agree that certainly creates issues. So in situ leaching is one of those things. The monitoring of what will happen when someone leaves an area after they've injected that into the ground. Will it end up contaminating other sites? That requires monitoring. Groundwater moves slowly. Maybe the contamination happens after the company has long since left. They've changed the name of the company. The director that's on $5 million a year, he's retired, she's retired, whoever, right? And now you've got a problem. So I think the US is seeing this. They're a bit more mature in their contamination than other areas of the world. So it certainly requires a lot of energy to test to see whether you really know what's going to happen in the longer term.
Okay, we have one more question. Mr. Robin Liu, this is going to be the last one. Sorry. Yeah, Mr. Robin Liu.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Adam. Mr. Ehsan, thank you for the presentation. Mr. Ehsan, could you go back to the why groundwater important slide? Thank you.
Yes, dear.
Is this one, Mr. Robin?
Yes, thank you. So it is, I'm very surprised. And 97% groundwater is fresh water, and that supplies for the drinking water, irrigation water, industrial water. That's all. And by the way,
No.
yeah?
Yeah, no. I said 97% of the Earth's liquid fresh water is groundwater.
Yeah, 97%
Yes.
of groundwater is fresh
Yes,
water.
yes, the liquid fresh water is groundwater.
Yeah, so let me be clear. Of all the liquid fresh water on Earth, there is water in the atmosphere, there's lakes, there's rivers, and there's groundwater. Of all that fresh water, only 3% is not groundwater. So 97% of liquid fresh water is groundwater, right?
Yeah.
Ehsan?
Yes, you're right. Yeah.
Right. So it's a little bit different to saying that 97% of groundwater is fresh water, because I don't think that's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're right,
Okay.
yeah.
And
Okay.
but the other thing, Robin, to take into account here is that
Yes.
a lot of groundwater is very deep, greater than 800 meters below the Earth's surface. And where
Yes.
it's very deep, it's quite hard to get access to. So some of that groundwater, there's an amount of groundwater, I can't remember the percentage, but let's say half, is within a depth below the ground where you could take it out if you wanted to. But some of it is so deep that it's quite hard to get access to because it's too deep. But yeah, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Just
Thank you,
like
sir.
the Great Artesian Basin of Australia.
That's correct.
Basin.
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
They are very deep.
Yes, I'm
One more
working on that
thing.
right now.
Yeah.
Hmm.
One more thing, Mr. Ehsan,
Yeah.
you're doing your PhD and your research is in Queensland.
I'm doing my
Adini's,
PhD.
PhD. Adini's coal mine, and there are a lot of coal mines in Queensland and also in New South Wales. I'm just wondering, South Australia, are there coal mines in South Australia?
That's a good question. Ehsan, do you know the answer to that?
What I don't have any experience about the mining in South. You asked me
There's-
about
There's a little bit, but not much coal mining in South Australia. They do mine
Okay.
graphite. They mine graphite, which is similar to coal but not the same. But there's a very large uranium mine, and there's also copper mines in South Australia, but not so much coal. They're different systems.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Adrian.
Yeah.
One more question, if I can.
Okay, last,
Mr.
Robin, last. We are at the age right now.
Okay, Mr. Ehsan, you were
Yeah.
talking just now about Linus waste site peer review Sahabat Alam Malaysia. What was that all about?
which
Linus
story?
waste site. Linus waste site. What has it got to do with this groundwater peer review?
Oh,
Something about a waste site.
Okay, the
Yeah,
Linus,
the
the
slide.
Linus in Gebeng, Pahang. So Mr. Ehsan showing the slide just now.
Oh, the
alright,
Malaysian
Linus.
one.
So,
Yeah.
okay,
it's an Australian company. We all know Linus is from Australia. So maybe a bit on how groundwater models over there. We all know about the story. They did not have any permanent radioactive
Yes.
storage, but they do have temporary storage facilities. But the way that the procedural way of doing that are quite suspicious. It's almost the same case as Carmichael mine. So do you have any opinion on that? I mean, based on what information that we have from the social media and from the news.
I put this one as example that say this is like warning. The things happen in Australia, maybe it's happened in your case. You need to be careful about the process of those kinds of things. So because of that, I put it in here. Yeah.
All right, sure. So I guess
So
yeah.
we do have issue of groundwater contamination at this gabbing.
Oh, no,
Is it-
Mr. Robin. So what
Yeah.
Mr. Ehsan is talking that if we are not being careful, then we might have some issue in the future. So
I
that is
see.
what it relates to the peer review. So
I see.
independent peer review needs to check what Linus or what the authority report comes out. So I guess that's the way of how to move forward. We have the report from the Linus, and maybe we can appoint independent checker review or peer review whatsoever, technically, scientifically, and then we can decide whether the facilities or the environmental issue has been resolved or not. Is that correct, Mr. Adrian? I think that's the way forward, right? Mr. Ehsan, yeah?
Yes, yeah. You're right. Yeah.
So
Okay, so
thank you,
Definitely.
thank you, Mr. Adam. Yes.
thank you, Mr. Robin. So I guess
If we do have problem with this Linus issue, groundwater issue, we will call you, Mr. Adam. Maybe better.
Okay.
you
Sounds good.
should call the NCGRT in Flinders, the National Center for Groundwater Research and Training. Maybe they can help.
Well, that's
Alright.
me. So I'm part of that. I was one of the researchers who started the NCGRT. So
Yeah.
no problem. Yeah, give us a call.
Alright.
We can help
All
out.
right. Thank you, Adrian and
worries,
Ehsan.
Adam.
for the talk.
Thank you.
Thank you,
so much.
Flinders and NCGRT. I guess we will be having some more talks in the future, Adrian.
Yes.
And then
Right.
and thank you to the online reviewer and online attendees and GSM and IGM. And again, thanks to all.